When the Endurance disappeared beneath the ice, the expedition didn't end. It transformed. 28 men now stood on a drifting sheet of Antarctic ice. No ship. No shelter. No way to call for help. The nearest civilization was hundreds of miles away. And beneath their feet, the ground itself was moving. Every day, the ice carried them farther from where they wanted to go. They weren't walking toward safety. They were drifting away from it. Shackleton gathered the crew. He spoke calmly. There would be no panic. No arguments. No false hope. From this moment forward, every decision would have only one purpose. Keep every man alive. That sounds simple. It wasn't. Because the first question arrived almost immediately. Where do you sleep? When your campsite is floating. The men pitched their tents directly on the ice. Imagine lying down at night, knowing that beneath only a few feet of frozen ice was the Southern Ocean. One crack. One shift. One bad night. And everyone could disappear into freezing black water. During the day, they hunted seals and penguins for food. At first, the hunting felt almost routine. But nobody enjoyed it. Many of the men had grown attached to the expedition's animals. Now survival left them no choice. Every meal bought another day. Every seal meant another sunrise. Then another problem appeared: fuel. Without fuel, they couldn't melt snow into drinking water. Without drinking water, survival would become impossible. Everything had to be rationed: food, fuel, matches. Even movement. Every unnecessary step wasted energy. Every unnecessary decision carried consequences. Weeks passed. The men settled into a strange routine: wake up, check the ice, cook breakfast, repair equipment, hunt, sleep, repeat. It almost felt normal. Until the ice reminded them where they really were. One night, a loud crack echoed beneath the camp. Not somewhere in the distance. Directly beneath them. Men jumped from their sleeping bags. The ice was splitting apart. Dark water rushed upward through the opening. Within seconds, tents were collapsing. Equipment slid toward the crack. Everyone scrambled to save what they could. Imagine trying to rescue your entire home, while the ground beneath it is breaking apart. By sunrise, the camp had been moved, again. This became their life. Whenever the ice cracked, they packed everything. Started over, again. And again. Then came the moment Shackleton had feared. The ice itself began breaking into smaller pieces. Staying wasn't an option anymore. The floating world beneath their feet was disappearing. There was only one choice left. The lifeboats. 3 tiny wooden boats. Built for short trips. Not for crossing one of the most violent oceans on Earth. But staying meant certain death. Leaving offered at least a chance. The crew loaded everything they could carry: food, navigation instruments, sleeping bags. The boats were overcrowded before they even pushed away from the ice. Then the ocean reminded them why nobody willingly sailed these waters. Towering waves smashed into the boats. Freezing spray soaked every man within minutes. Then it froze. Ice formed on clothing. Ice formed on ropes. Ice formed inside the boats. Every few hours, someone had to chip away the growing ice. Not because it looked bad. Because the extra weight could sink them. Imagine trying to empty water from a tiny boat, while waves continue crashing over the side. Hour after hour. Day after day. Nobody stayed dry. Nobody stayed warm. Nobody slept properly. Eventually, land appeared. Cheers erupted. After months surrounded by nothing but ice and water, they had reached solid ground. Elephant Island. For the first time in nearly 500 days. The men stood on land. Some dropped to their knees. Others simply stared. It felt like victory. It wasn't. Shackleton climbed a nearby ridge and looked around. Nothing. No buildings, no ships, no smoke. No people. Elephant Island was completely uninhabited. They had escaped Antarctica, only to become stranded on an island where nobody would ever think to search. Hope lasted only a few hours. Then reality returned. Even if they stayed alive, nobody knew they were there. Weeks could become months. Months could become years. Shackleton realized something terrifying. Rescue wasn't coming. They would have to rescue themselves. The nearest whaling station lay on South Georgia Island, nearly 800 miles away, across the Southern Ocean. Even today, experienced sailors fear these waters. Rogue waves, hurricane-force winds, freezing temperatures. Now imagine attempting that journey in a lifeboat barely 23 feet long. Most people would have called it suicide. Shackleton called it the only option. He chose 5 companions, not because they were the strongest, but because together they gave the expedition its best chance. The remaining 22 men watched in silence. Think about that moment. The only boat capable of reaching civilization is leaving without you. Will it return? Or have you just watched your last hope disappear over the horizon? Nobody knew. Not even Shackleton. The small boat was named the James Caird. Before leaving, the crew reinforced it with wood salvaged from the Endurance. Extra canvas was added for protection. Every improvement mattered, because once they launched, there would be nowhere to hide. The Southern Ocean welcomed them with violence. Waves rose like moving buildings. Sometimes the boat climbed so high that all they could see was gray sky. Seconds later, it plunged into valleys of water so deep the horizon vanished completely. The men couldn't see what was coming next. Only walls of water. Freezing spray hit their faces day and night. Their sleeping bags became soaked. Their clothes froze. Their beards turned white with ice. One sailor later recalled waking to discover ice covering his body like armor. Every few hours, the crew hacked ice from the boat with axes. If too much accumulated, the boat would become too heavy and sink. Then came another nightmare. Navigation today. We have GPS, satellites, digital maps. Shackleton had none of those. His navigator, Frank Worsley, had only a sextant. To use it, he needed to see the sun. Clouds often hid it for days. One mistake of just a single degree could mean missing South Georgia entirely. Out there, missing the island didn't mean trying again. It meant disappearing forever. Imagine carrying 28 lives on your shoulders, knowing that one cloudy day could doom them all. After more than 2 weeks battling the ocean, someone spotted land. South Georgia. Against all odds. They had done it. Or so they thought. There was one final twist. The storm had pushed them onto the wrong side of the island. The whaling stations were on the opposite coast. Between them stood towering mountains, glaciers, cliffs, no roads. No trails, no maps. Nobody had ever crossed those mountains before. Most people would have waited for better weather. Shackleton refused. Every extra day meant the men on Elephant Island came closer to death. So he chose 2 companions. The 3 men began climbing. Without climbing equipment. Without tents. Without sleeping bags. Without knowing where they were going. The mountains forced impossible decisions. Should they climb higher? Or risk hidden crevices below? At one point, they reached a steep snow slope. Walking down would take hours. Time they didn't have. Shackleton looked at the others. Then he sat down. He used his body like a sled. The others followed. The 3 men shot down the mountain at terrifying speed. One mistake, and they would have slammed into rocks below. Instead, they survived. After 36 exhausting hours, the men heard something they hadn't heard in nearly 2 years. A steam whistle. The sound echoed through the mountains. Civilization. Shackleton had reached the whaling station. The workers couldn't believe what they were seeing. 3 filthy men. Beards hanging to their chests. Faces blackened by smoke and salt. Clothes torn apart by the ocean. One worker later admitted. He didn't recognize Shackleton until he spoke. Rescue ships were organized immediately. But Antarctica refused to surrender its prisoners. The first rescue attempt failed. Ice blocked the way. The second attempt failed. The third attempt failed. Imagine waiting on Elephant Island, watching every day for a ship. not knowing whether Shackleton was alive or dead then. On the 30th of August, 1916, a ship finally broke through. The men on Elephant Island saw a tiny shape on the horizon. At first, they weren't sure. Then someone shouted, "It's a ship." As it drew closer, one familiar figure stood on deck. Ernest Shackleton. His first question wasn't about supplies, or the journey, or the ship. He asked one simple question. "Are you all well?" The answer came back. "All safe, all well." 28 men had left for Antarctica. 28 men came home. Not one life had been lost. Shackleton never completed his original mission. He never crossed Antarctica. History remembers him for something far greater. When everything went wrong. When the ship was gone. When rescue seemed impossible. When every decision carried the weight of human lives. He never abandoned a single member of his crew. More than a century later, the Endurance rests nearly 10,000 feet beneath the Antarctic Ocean, silent, frozen, almost perfectly preserved. A reminder that sometimes, the greatest expeditions are not remembered for reaching their destination. They are remembered for bringing everyone home.